available for our folks on demand. And also, just as a reminder too, all these sessions are recorded for you, that you have evergreen access, which means forever, ever, like eternity. So by show of hands, how many of you, if you don't mind, just show me, were at the intensive, whether it was in person or virtually? Sweet, that was everybody. Okay, good. I know a few folks couldn't join us today. So I thought, why don't we do this? I'd love to hear some of your updates, and as kind of we just remind each other of kind of, who we are, and would love to hear a little bit from you all, your takeaways from that speaker intensive. So why don't we do this? Let's just share a little bit about, and there's no, whoever the spirit moves first is fine, but kind of give us one or two updates where you're at in your speaking, and also what were some of the takeaways that you had from speaker intensive. So who would like to start?
I don't mind going first.
Okay, go ahead, Sarah.
I was just going to say that I jumped in with the speaker intensive and did the speaker spotlight, which was the first time that I've ever given a talk in front of a Hall of Fame speaker or NSA board members. I was terribly nervous, but I was debuting my new kind of way of describing myself. So I've been one of those speakers that's really struggled with defining what I talk about. And I have landed somewhere, and that's what I presented on in the speaker spotlight. And it went really well, and I got some great feedback. And so since then, I've updated my speaker website and my speaker brochure and my social media to match kind of that messaging. So the next thing I need to do, I'd have to look at demo reel stuff, but just feeling really good to kind of have progress on that part.
Oh, that's great. Hey, let's get up for Sarah. I mean, just the fact that there's progress, that feeling is so empowering, right? And it's these small little add-ons that over time. How many others of you have felt surprised by how supportive NSA, and not necessarily the NSA Carolinas, although, yeah, I'd love for you to think that, but like Sarah, I mean, it was intimidating. You pushed yourself, you're in front of Hall of Fame presenters, CSPs, certified speaking professionals, yet you still did it, which, number one, kudos. But how did you feel afterward?
Honestly, I couldn't have had a better experience. I mean, and it wasn't just the nervousness after the speaker spotlight, but just the entire event was really welcoming. I've been an entrepreneur for 10 years. And so I go into these circles where entrepreneurs meet, and there can be a lot of like, oh, you're doing this. Well, I'm doing this. Oh, you're doing this. Well, I'm doing this. And this was like the opposite of that. I mean, it was just a really welcoming environment. It seems like no matter how successful someone is, they're not bragging about it. And it seemed like there's that genuine, like, rising tide raises all boats. Even if we speak about the same thing, we can support each other because we're probably going to speak about it in different ways. It was really cool.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I would have been intimidated myself if I was there. And I think anybody that says they're not nervous before talking in front of any audience, but let alone a group of peers who are speakers, that's extra nerve-wracking. So that's really great, Sarah. All right, who would like to go next? Kind of maybe a quick update where you're at and takeaways from speaker intensive. Mike?
Yeah, I just want to say it was great meeting all of you in person. That experience alone is a real difference than being here on Zoom. So I love that part of it. And also just being in that environment, okay? Because Sarah just talked about she was nervous. And I know, I learned about how experienced she already is. So that was comforting to me to know even she was nervous getting up there, even though she has a lot of experience. So that was good for me. And then the storytelling part, an insight to that on, and what I got from that is when she talked about take a moment in time, which we all have thousands of them in our life, and make a story out of it. And that just resonated with me because it's starting to think about, well, what stories can I tell? And now I'm thinking about what moments in time do I have? And there are so many. And I was like, oh, can I make a story out of that? Is it connected to the theme? So I love that part of it. And just the atmosphere, just being there, meeting people. We're all on the same sort of ship, maybe at different levels, but we're all on the same cruise. And I just love that feeling. And I'm still thinking about it. I've watched it twice, the recording, and each time I've gotten something else out of it. So yeah, I loved it.
Wow, Mike, that's awesome. Hey, give it up for Mike, y'all. That's great. Who else? Lynn?
First of all, I want to say to Sarah, I really enjoyed your presentation. And as a matter of fact, I catch myself thinking about giving advice and changing it to a question. So, so that was a big takeaway for me. Is Sarah's
just made my day. Thank you so much, Lynn.
Yeah. So that was a big takeaway. But Kelly was awesome. I think the things that I noticed that I really liked about how she presented was her cadence, was her timing, and how I just felt so drawn in, and the power of her stories. I mean, they were just kind of like Mike said, they were moments in time, but they were they're very identifiable. So I think that was a big takeaway for me. And like Mike said, it was wonderful to get to meet people in person, and everybody was so welcoming. And, it would be easy to think, oh gosh, all these people are, they're world-renowned speakers and they're this and that. But everybody was super nice and very welcoming and very much about, we want you to take away something. So, I really appreciated that. And I'm, still working on my speech. We had a good little meeting yesterday, Mike and Linda and Steve and I. So when we talked about the fact, I think one of the things I'm kind of a little stuck. I think I ended up writing a training program instead of a speech. So I need to go back and do some, and because that's the world I've lived in for a long time. So I think that's kind of where I am. But moving forward, definitely moving forward.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Lynn, thank you for sharing that. Give it up for Lynn.
Yay. Whoop, whoop.
All right. I'm making eye contact with Brandon. Brandon, how about you?
Hi, I'm doing good. I love the intensive. It was great. I had a couple takeaways. One was just the structure, like building context and characters right at the beginning of the storytelling is not something I've ever really thought about. I just usually start at the beginning and go to the end. But I think bringing that into the story is going to be great. And I've also been struggling with how to bring like energy into my presentation. And I keep thinking like, oh, I need to talk louder. But she does it without doing that. And I think what I talked to her afterwards about was just how to bring energy like you do conversationally when you're just excited to talk to a friend and you're hyped up about something that just happened, just how to bring conversational energy into my talk as opposed to just energetic energy. So that was huge. And then where I'm at generally is I'm figuring out like my speaking topic has been I've been rewriting and re-outlining. So I'm getting centered on that to really align it with what problem I solve as opposed to how I solve it. So I keep trying to speak like my coaching instead of speaking to like a different kind of the problem I solve. If that makes sense, it might be a little vague, but anyway, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Brandon, thank you. Give it up for Brandon. All right, y'all, keep it going. Who's the spirit moving? Steve, and then Linda.
Yeah, so, there were a lot of takeaways from that session. I mean, besides meeting everybody and listening to some just fantastic speeches, I think one of the things that I gained from it was so much of the timing. I want to say timing, but it's really the fact of when I tell a story, I like to just, say, here's what happened. I'll give you, it's much more matter of fact as opposed to emotional, and more of here's what happened as opposed to here's how I felt, or here's what I thought, or here's, the impression this person made on me. And slowing slowing down the story, just making the story slow down a little bit so that you really get into to more of the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows of the story. And I thought, I mean, it's just a fantastic experience to see her do that. I'm still working on my own signature story, and with our small group that met yesterday, helped me refine it even a little bit more. But it is one of those situations where it's great to have a number of stories in your tool belt. And I've thought of a variety of stories. I'm just not to a point of being able to package them together, so to speak. So that's kind of where I stand.
Yeah, that's good. Awesome, Steve. Get up for Steve. And I got a question for y'all. Did Kelly, I've not watched the full 4.5 hours myself. I did edit it and kind of skim through it to make sure that the final recording was going to be what we needed to provide for y'all. I am going to watch it tomorrow while I've got a very long drive. I will listen to the whole thing. Did Kelly talk about like how many stories should you have, or how to take a story and shift it different ways for different types of audiences, like the same story, but knowing how to pivot it a little bit? Did she talk about that? I see some head. Okay. Brandon, you're saying no. Did she, not the point yet, but like,
Yeah, I didn't hear like how to pivot, like how to tell the same story 10 different ways. Personally, I didn't catch that. But maybe I just missed that point. I was focusing on the other stuff.
Yeah.
Well, as a matter of fact, that as soon as she's done with her story, that's actually a question that I asked her. Was, do you take into consideration, the industry or the audience that you're in front of when you're choosing or changing a story? And at first she said, well, no, your story is your story, but you have to learn how to, and I don't know if she used the word tweak, but how to change a couple of things to make it something that the audience can identify with. Because in the end, the audience are human beings. And when you pick a moment in time, they may have experienced the same thing. And it may not be the actual subject of your talk, but as long as you can catch their engagement, well, you got them. So that was her answer. It doesn't have to be subject specific, but something to engage the audience.
Yeah. Okay. Because I'm hearing a common theme I want to address when everybody shares here. So I appreciate that feedback real quick. Yeah. All right, Linda, I think you were next, right?
I think so. I want to thank you for allowing it to be online. I was planning on actually going, but it just worked better to go online. So I wish I could have met everybody in person, but it was still really effective, and I got a lot out of it. I was intellectualizing stories, like I need to put a story in, and some of the work that I'm doing is you need to remember childhood stories, which is impossible for me to remember. But what she said, and I knew it intellectually, but it just went to my heart, is that the story is part of the content. In fact, it can even be more powerful than the content, that people might remember it more and get more out of it. And so I'm not thinking as much content story, as opposed to how can I communicate? And it's to get the audience to transform. I mean, I like to help people transform. And so when she said it that way, the story flows into the content, back into the story, into the content. That's how I came out with it. And also she said, someone said, well, do you need to be 100% truthful? And I am, as much as I can remember. But the thing that she really helped me with, because I can't remember everything, is how did you feel? You don't have to have all the details perfect. It's when I was in this situation, this is how I viewed it. And I thought that was really helpful too. So,
Yes. Good.
yeah. And as
Beautiful,
far
Linda.
as,
Oh, sorry, Linda, keep going. Keep going.
Oh no, it's okay. I don't need to really share where I am. I'm okay.
You sure?
Yes.
Okay. Good, good. You know, my wife saw me speak a couple months ago, and in preparation for I had two really big talks for me personally this year. One was my accredited speaker with Toastmasters, and then also my TEDx talk. So I was using little bits, trying my stories out differently, not embellishing them, not making anything up, but I've got 2 or 3 stories that literally could be told multiple different ways depending on why I'm using that story and who my audience is. And anyway, my wife afterward, because she saw me, she was in person, she says, I've never heard you say that story, to share that story that way. I've heard you use it 2 or 3 different ways, and every single time they're laughing, 30 seconds later, you can hear a pin drop. And then you got them laughing. And I was like, I know that's one of the beauties of speaking, but it's also one of the frustrations that it literally becomes art. And I'm not saying I'm a great artist, but our audience truly is the canvas, where we know through practice, through repetition, through this, I would call it artistry, how to position a story so that it is relevant and engaging for an audience and also carries a point that might actually surprise them. So I don't think there's one way of doing this. I think there's multiple ways, and it's like even Jerry Seinfeld as a comedian will say he's always collecting stories. He's always writing them down. He's always trying. It could be the same joke, but he's trying it 20 different ways, and there's not one way it would work best. So keep that in mind too, because I don't think there's like one pill here to make it all work the best way. It could be multiple ways. Yeah, Matthew. Yeah.
So you know what's funny? So I just saw Seinfeld last week. He was in Arizona, and that's funny because I did notice that I heard some of his jokes that I had heard before, but he told them in a little bit of a different way. So that's definitely true. So I wasn't able to join in person. I'm in Arizona, so I was very, very jealous of you all who got to be there in person. But I really did enjoy it a lot. Kelly's a fantastic speaker, and I'll just chime in and say, Sarah, I also thought you did a really, really great job. That was very, very impressive to watch you do that. And then I think I'll take it a different direction, which I think one of the biggest pieces I got away was the storytelling, but also those breakout sessions with Larry and with Mike Mooney, and then with Stan. So I'm working on all those things. I'm working on my website. I'm working on a demo reel. I'm working on a book. And so to have kind of one after the other, even though they were short, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, to take away little pieces from Stan and Mike and Larry on writing a book and putting together your website. There were things that I took away from that where literally the next day I changed something on my website, or I thought about something different in terms of how I'm going to put together my book structure. So that was really fantastic to hear Kelly and to hear the stories, and to find things I could identify with, then to take away other pieces for the website and book and all that. So that was really a well worth it to sit and watch that for 4 hours. It was really, really well done. So
That's awesome, man. Give it up for Matthew. And we've got Evelyn or Terry. Y'all can, whoever goes first.
I can go. So, well, in my case, because I was like back and forth, I mean, I enjoyed to see Kelly. She's amazing. And she speaks to you like, okay, for example, I did a question and she told me like, okay, sugar, tell me. So it's like, she's like a friend, so it's really, really welcoming, her approach. And I really love that part. And the thing is that when I was hearing her, it's like, I know, again, what I want to say, but she talked about emotions, for example. And actually, that was my question, like, how emotional, like how much you need to be when you are speaking, So it's like, definitely you need to know your audience. It's something that I think that we are going to catch that with the practice. So definitely the part of the practice is something that we need to do, right? So for me, it was amazing. I'm still, again, figuring out how am I going to tell my story, because I know that, for example, I'm super expressive and my tone of voice is like really loud, and I use my hands. I'm sorry. I use my hands a lot. So it's like I need to know like how I'm going to speak to in front of an audience, depending on like what type of audience they are, you know? So yes, that's what I have. Mhm.
Loving it. Give it up for Evelyn and Terry Quimby.
Hi there, everybody. It's snowing in Michigan. Hopefully everybody else has better weather. I had hoped also to be in person at the event, but that's what I really like about this chapter. Even if you can't make it, there are other ways that you can participate. And as Matt pointed out on the breakout rooms, I felt very included, even though I was not in person. And I thought the breakout rooms, the rotation was great to pick up some different tidbits and have some conversations going there. Regarding Callie, I just keep thinking about her story about going back to the tree, years later, and how she told it and how that unfolded, and just the way she told it, the words chosen, all of the intentionality that went into that story just sticks with me, which is what a story is supposed to do.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, hey, tell me about the breakouts real quick, y'all. Well, first of all, let's get up for Terry. Give me, I think, yeah, Matthew, you mentioned we had Larry doing kind of a recap and a Q&A with book publishing. I think we had Stan on either website or speaker reel, and we had Mike on either website or speaker reel, right? Were those the topics?
Yeah, Mike did speaker reel, Stan did the website, right, and then Larry did a book publishing, which was a little bit of a summary of the larger book publishing session that the NSA Carolina chapters had done maybe a few weeks prior to that, which I also joined, and that was fantastic. But yeah, the breakouts were great, and a lot of participation from people in the room.
Yeah, because each one of those topics is not a 20-minute roundtable. I mean, each one of those could be a full semester-long course, so to speak. But just touching on it, I think, take what you can from it, and then, depending where you're at, what you already have, then it's all about, okay, how, focus one thing at a time. How do you that whole common phrase of how do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time. So we can talk about that too, because that takes a lot of project management, even just to get, how do you get a demo video done the right way? How do you get a website done? I mean, so happy to answer some questions on that today as well. So, all right. Everybody feeling good? I hope so. Okay, good. So today, again, quick updates we just did, takeaways from Speaker Intensive. Then I thought what we do is do a little debrief just for the modules 3 to 5. In Paid to Speak, it's not just kind of my word. The book here is not the Bible, so to speak, of how to run or how to grow a speaking business. But from the books that I've read, from the coaching I've hired with people, for my conversations with all sorts of people within NSA Carolinas and around, there are some common principles. And what I like at least about the Paid to Speak process, it is kind of an orderly model of, hey, don't, do things kind of in this order a little bit, so that it kind of helps us not just with a clear path, but as I believe it was, Sarah, you mentioned, I need to feel progress too, because it could be real daunting, real intimidating and overwhelming to feel like I got to get all this done now. And no, it's really done over time. And in the spirit of transparency too, this entire next week, not this week, but next, I have blocked off any remaining calendar sessions or really any other priorities that might pop up, just so I could focus on a website revision myself. And I'll probably put 30, 40 hours into it, because I'm looking to do a complete kind of reframe and upgrade. And I don't even know what that looks like yet. but it's going to start for me researching some other speakers' websites to see kind of what they're doing. I mean, so much has changed in the past 2 or 3 years. My site is okay. Some people might say my site's great. Well, I think it's okay. I think I need to look 2023. And my website designer agreed with me, I'm sure, right? So I've got the whole next week blocked off just for that. It might even take another week beyond that. I don't know. We'll see. So I'm right in the walk with y'all. But does that sound good if we do a little debrief of modules 3 through 5? I pulled out some of what I felt was some of the highlights in each module, and then at the end of each section, what I'll do is we'll stop for some questions. Sound like a good plan of attack? I hope so. And then we'll also break out in some small groups here as well, and that way, if you like, I've kind of scheduled that. That way you can talk amongst your groups as well, and then we can come back to the large group. All right. So does anybody remember the focus of module 3? Spoiler alert.
Was it pricey?
That's module 4.
Oh,
Finding speaking opportunities.
Speaking opportunities.
Brandon, yes, look at that. All right. Because look, pay to speak and really building a successful business. Yes, we want to focus on, for all the right reasons, if we want to be able to do this as a profession, whether it's part-time or full-time, we have to know who are the groups that can pay. But sometimes we have to be able to find speaking opportunities in general as well. So module 3 is really about identifying those speaking opportunities. And yes, all of us could probably reach out to and have numerous Toastmasters clubs, Rotary groups, groups in Meetup, in the community. There's all sorts of ways to find speaking opportunities. I want us to really be thinking about who are the groups that actually who have a budget, who can actually pay. All right, so the target audience is going to be where I'd say let's focus on that. Let's keep that lens in mind. Most of us, I would imagine, in fact, let me say that all of us could probably speak to a variety of different groups, right? But I'd encourage you to say and think to yourself, how can I start with one target audience, target industry, make sure that I know, hey, this is how I would penetrate this specific type of industry or group. And that way you've got a good model that then you can apply to other different types of industry groups as well. Okay. So the target focus is going to be real key. Now on page 57, I pulled this out for you all. I want you to be thinking about your target group, specifically in your ideal audience. And if you're not sure who your ideal audience is, that's okay. But I would encourage you to reflect on that. Give yourself some time over a coffee, put yourself in your backyard, go to the beach, meditate, go to a coffee, do what you need to do to say, hey, look, who is that ideal person listening to me present? And if I were to go to their LinkedIn or look at their business card, what would be the title behind their name? Does that kind of make sense? Because a lot of times what I hear from folks is they say, "Why? I want to talk to business leaders." Okay. Or college students. Same thing. It's like, okay, that's a good start, but is that specific enough? In my opinion, I'd say no, because we want to say, well, tell me what type of industry are they? What literally is the title on their business card? So I would encourage you to look at page 57 for that, to get kind of just real crystal clear. Because in a moment, that's what's going to help us then focus on where do they go to get their training? Where do they go to get their certification? So how many of you have got an audience in mind already? If you do, put that in the chat. I'd love to see kind of where some of us are at as far as our target audiences go. Put that in the chat.
your chat is only to you, Kevin.
Oh, okay. We'll fix that.
But I had another question.
So I'm making everybody a co-host real quick. Hold on. I'm listening to you, Linda.
Okay. I came up with Mine is service-based entrepreneurs or self-employed professionals. But in that group is a ton of different, like, it could be financial planners, it could be coaches, it could be a lot. If I go for the complimentary first, I didn't want to narrow that group down too much because I'm not 100% sure who would respond the best. So if you have that type of group, how are you like picking 3 subcategories in that, like entrepreneurs in that group?
Okay. Any thoughts on that real quick before I chime in on it a little bit? Any thoughts with how to do that? And everybody should have access to the chat now. So post in the chat if you don't mind. Kind of your target audience. So Matthew says legal and compliance professionals. Okay, Sarah, you're saying college students, specifically juniors, seniors, and master's graduate students interviewing in the next 12 months. Okay, good. Let's get 2 or 3 more in there if we can. Okay, Steve, insurance, financial services corporations. Lynn, manufacturing associations, HR professionals. Okay, good. So I think the next slide might answer or provide some context, Lynn, if I can just jump to it, and then we'll come back to your question. And from a speaking business perspective, and this is where the business hat, really we want to put that on and be thinking about what is a successful speaker. And of course, look, we define success different ways, but who is a speaker who makes $250,000 plus a year speaking? What do they do a little differently than most speakers who struggle? This is a really tough business. It can be. That's another reason I like to make the complex as simple as much as possible, because just speaking, having a great presentation, that's a prereq. So how do we wrap the business? What's the business side of this that goes into it? And I'll give you a perfect example of this that I just spoke to a group this past weekend and how I got that. So if it's the right type of, when we have that focus, if we spoke to a group in insert your state, right? I know we've got people from all over the country. If there's a group in Arizona, like where Matthew lives, well, let's say it's the Arizona Association of Community Colleges, or the Arizona Community College System, right? There's likely going to be, when you see the word Arizona, do you think there's likely going to be other states that have their own state associations? And the answer is absolutely yes. That's kind of a rhetorical question. Sometimes if it's a smaller state, there might be a couple states in one just because they're kind of tight geographically, or if it's a smaller state, groups like Florida, Texas, California, New York, they're going to have their own state associations. In fact, they might have a couple. California's got 3 or 4 within SHRM alone, which is the Society for Human Resource Management. So let me give you an example of this. Just last Friday, I spoke for the Virginia Community College System. And they've got all over the country a community college association for that network. And what this does for us as presenters, it gives us not only one target audience, but it gives us multiple that we can replicate in, frankly, any other state. So instead of going from this type of group, like this entrepreneur group, to this group, to this group, to all these different groups, now if we've developed one program and we've worked hard to tailor that program for this specific type of audience, now we've got perhaps 49 other different state associations that program is designed for. And that helps us just be, in my opinion, very, very efficient. Because if I'm talking to 3 different groups in the same week, a college group, a group of HR, and a group of educators, those are almost 3. I could use the same presentation, I'll have to tailor that 3 different ways. But if I can go to the community college system network and say, hey, I'm going to reach out to North Carolina now, I'm going to reach out to Georgia now, I'm going to reach out to Florida now, I'm going to insert other states. This is actually what I'm doing this week. Number one, they're easy to find. Number two, they have conferences, and they're likely charging a registration fee. That's module 4. We'll dive into that. So does this model, does it make sense in context at least? The structure behind it? And this is more outreach too. So this is one thing to keep in mind if we're doing outreach. I would say why it's important, because it's going to help us be efficient and laser focused. Now, when groups reach out to us, if they go to your website, or if you wake up to an email or something, you get pinged a direct message on your LinkedIn or something, and hey, you could speak, or we could speak to anybody. My list last August for me was the busiest month I'd ever had. Not to impress you, but to impress upon you. And I looked at where all these engagements coming from. It was like kind of all over. I had schools, various different types of groups. A couple of them I'd done some outreach for, but most of them came from referral. So when people reach out to us, it could be from whoever we know or how they heard about us. But for when we're doing outreach, which is what a lot of us have to do at the beginning or towards the beginning of building our speaking, then having that laser focus is going to be real key. And it doesn't mean we have to limit ourselves to that one specific group, but to get started, we want to at least have that focus on kind of where to start. Any questions on that, comments? Okay, so let's pick 2 or 3 out here. All right, so let me pick Sarah's out just for a moment. If you go look in the chat, Sarah said that she wants to talk to college students, specifically juniors and seniors and graduate students who will be interviewing within the next 12 months. So Sarah, sounds like you have a program for that type of student, right? Looking to interview, right? Do you have a name for that program or a title?
The program isn't around interviewing, but I do have a program for them. The reason I picked the ones who are interviewing is because they're actually thinking about getting hired, not just finishing their degree. But yes, I call it the CORE method. It's about communicating at work. It's about professional communication. And then I have a writing and a speaking piece that goes with it.
Awesome. So knowing that's your intended audience, who have you identified already? So you're not, yes, you could go from college to college to college to college to college. So there's a little bit of a structure there within each school. And I would say, yes, do that. But I would also recommend to focus on, okay, of all those, whether they're career counselors or advisors, professional advisors to upperclassmen, what association do they belong to where I could do one program where all of them have a butt in a seat?
Yeah, I was looking at IEEE, so the Engineering Association. I think that I could put together some workshops for IEEE that the professors and some of the advisors would be interested in, and then hopefully communicate that message of like, bring this to your students.
Perfect. And I'm not familiar with EEE. That sounds like a pro wrestler.
It's IEEE. It's like an engineering association.
Okay. Cool. And look, if you see that, and look, let's maybe just dive into this next piece here. There's 2 criteria that I look for at least. So if I'm Sarah here and I've identified IEEE as a group, here's what I would want to see to know that this is going to be a group that has events where they're looking for speakers. How do I know that, right? Because I'm not going to go talk to the club on campus. They're not going to have budget to pay me. And yes, I might be able to speak to them once, but that state conference where they're looking for speakers, how do I find that, right? And the criteria that I would look for would be, do they have a structure and do they have events? Okay. And if they have structure and events, which if I needed to find that, I guess I can in a moment, but if they got the structure and events, then most likely the structure would mean they've got that statewide model. So let's just take Sarah, remind me, you're in North Carolina, right? Forgive me. Okay. Yeah, I thought you were. So within North Carolina, what I'd want to be looking for is that there's various chapters within North Carolina. And sometimes you find that, sometimes you don't. So a structure could be kind of weak, or it could be really strong, like within SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management. They've got like 14 chapters within North Carolina and a state association. But if a group only has a state association, not a lot of local chapters, like a Charlotte chapter, one in Raleigh chapter, Asheville chapter, a couple others, okay, it might still have a structure where they have an annual meeting or a statewide conference, but they're not going to really have a really robust structure like what I might kind of want to be looking for. So I always look for these two things. I look for, do they have a local structure? And local meaning, again, local level, a couple chapters within a state, but more specific, what I'm looking for is that state association. Is there a state association that I could replicate 49 other times? And then do they have events? And usually if they have a structure, they're going to have events. And if they have events, they're going to have a structure. So they kind of feed themselves. But with events, if they're hosting that annual fall or spring conference, then envision a conference. What's one aspect of a conference? Speakers, right? So Sarah, have you kind of vetted that out? Do they have that kind of structure? Do you know?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that a lot of the chapter activity that I saw here in North Carolina was led by student groups. So it would be one of those models where I would probably be speaking for free in order to get access. So I'd have to think really hard about that. I don't think that they're going to have the kind of conferences that I would get paid to speak. So it would definitely be a marketing piece. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So one group, and we're just using Sarah as a model here. So Google is going to be one of our best friends. The .com. That's what I mean. Because what you might want to type up, and you all for your own groups can do this, is type up association and graduating students or career. I've spoken to the Career Counseling Association. I believe it's called NACE in North Carolina. It's actually the National Association of Career Educators. That would be one I definitely would look at. I've spoken to several of their state groups. I've never really gotten to the national level yet. I haven't really focused on them, but I've talked for many state conferences. So find out what the buzzwords are of the professionals in that line of work, and find out the association they belong to, and speak locally. Try to get a couple chapters in, or just a couple groups in, because that's really going to position us nicely then for that state or regional conference coming up. So Google's going to be a great resource for all of us when you're looking to find what associations are in this type of professional. Let's pick Steve. Can we pick you? Insurance, financial services. So each, it's like a square is a rectangle. Rectangle's maybe a square, but insurance and financial, financial's a big one. So you're specifically looking at insurance. Is there a type of insurance that you're looking at? I'm still kind of figuring it out. So it really is. That's the world that I came from. Primarily, property and casualty type insurance. But I know I've got a background in life insurance, and there's always lots of opportunities for speaking at life insurance educational sessions. Like there's several designations in insurance where they have organizations, whether it's a chartered property casualty underwriter and so on. So really, I'm still trying to figure it out, Kevin. Well, that's a big nut to crack. There's a lot. You're going to find there's lots of groups within there, and I think your golden egg is going to be identifying. Let's pick a couple out by doing some homework on it, research, and then even dive into each one to see which one might be the best fit to start.
Okay. Can I tell you a little more about where I'm going with my speaking, and then maybe you can give me some insights? It's because my background, again, 30 years in the insurance industry, so that's where I know the language and I know the structure and so on. However, my speech is really going to be about, I'll call it agility and really the piece of being nimble, so that, you know, when changes are coming, you've got to be ready for them. And from a corporate manager or corporate employee standpoint, most changes, except for maybe COVID, most changes, whether it's a downsizing or some other thing, there's an inkling that something's coming, and most people aren't prepared for it. And they don't recognize some of the red flags that are coming up all the time. So this is all about identifying those, I'll call them red flags, and doing some preparation ahead of time. It's such a generic type topic. It's not specific to insurance, but because that's the world I came from, that's where I was focusing my attention.
And that's actually exactly what I was thinking. I mean, Steve, as you were describing your program, I'm thinking this is relevant for anybody with a pulse.
Right.
I mean, but what you can do is then leverage your experience to be that expert in the room that they're listening to. I really like the universality of what you shared, because it could be applied to any industry.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Well, let me do this. Let's kind of dive into some remaining module 3, and then see if we got any other questions about the target group, because this is going to be really key. And yeah, it's going to require some really mining out. What are some of the ideal groups? And I focus on associations. That is my model. When I talk to companies individually, it's usually because they've been in a seat, or somebody in their company was in a seat listening to me present at that national or statewide conference or local chapter. And when those internal companies come to me, that also bleeds into module 4, which is knowing when and how I can charge, because when they're this will be redundant when you hear it in a minute, but when they're reaching out to me, then that gives me a lot more leverage rather than me reaching out to them. Okay. But that's why my model, at least, I know a lot of speakers who have a similar type of model, is they want to focus where they can really they can present one time to be in front of a much larger group of people, with each one of those people being able to possibly hire them. All right. So what I'd encourage y'all to do, once you find that potential group, is study. This is page 68. Attend one or two of their meetings. With virtual now, gosh, I mean, you could register for one of these meetings just to kind of see, what's the vibe. Even virtually, you could get a good sense of the energy in the room and kind of how they're structured. But try to get to also one in person as well. And what I would encourage you to do, if you do go in person, let them know that you're coming. Right? Say, hey, I just signed up for this one of your next meeting. I love the topic. Blah blah blah. Also, let them know, page 70, there's a script here. I actually use this multiple times and tailor it a little differently. But let them know also that you speak. You might want to go to one of the two of their meetings first, to really identify that clean fit. But then find out, and if it's not posted on their association website for that state, find out how they select their speakers. I was working with somebody helping them do exactly this, and they're like, this one group, Kevin, has a speaker, submission form, and usually it's the VP of programs or the president-elect that you want to reach out to. If they have a VP of programs, that's the person who brings in speakers for their meetings. Reach out to them, and if you can't find anything about how they select speakers for their quarterly or monthly meetings, well, then that's when you would reach out to them and email them. But specifically, it's likely going to be a VP of programs or somebody on the board who's in charge of selecting speakers. But I literally I would reach out to them, but study them a little bit in advance first, and that's also going to help you know how to kind of speak their language. Some of these smaller or local groups do not expect a large fee up front, and you're probably thinking, okay, well, how do I get paid to speak? Well, it's more of a long game approach, in my opinion. And the long game can be achieved in just a short period of time. I did this exact model when I had just resigned my job and I focused only with SHRM, Society for Human Resource Management, SHRM. And I sat in a Greensboro coffee shop And I reached out to all 14 chapters, basically copying, pasting the same message to them. Because I knew I had an HR-centric type of presentation for their monthly chapter meeting on employee development and leadership. And ignorance was bliss. Back then, I didn't know this was a model. I just was like, I think this is what you're supposed to do. I also had a coach who kind of said, reach out to Sherm. This is but that's how you get speaking opportunities. You present, and none of them I got paid. But 6 months later, I had 11 presentations I had done for them. Within 6 months, I'd already done 11. And many of those led to state conferences the following year, which my second year speaking was already a 6-figure speaking business. But I didn't know that actually was a process. I didn't know there was actually like an orderly way of kind of doing that. But I zoned in. I got laser focused on SHRM. And I'll be honest with you, if I'd picked something else besides SHRM, I don't know if I would have had that success. SHRM is a very structured organization. It has exactly what I'm looking for in any type of association now. They got structure and then they have events. So I would just make sure that any group or association you're looking at kind of does as well, because even if you're not getting paid at that local chapter level, you can have multiple things. You might even want to take a screenshot of this. I think it's in page 88 of the book. There are so many ways to monetize a free speech. You can get value from it, regardless if you get a paycheck. Now, some of them might have a small budget. You can let them know, hey, my professional speaking rates are normally this, but would love to have this opportunity to speak with y'all, share my message. I'd be willing to discount it if you can provide video for me. I mean, talk about how to get video. I'm not a big fan of paying for it. I'm not a big fan of hiring a crew to come in and videotape you with a 3 to 4 camera angle shot. You're looking at $3,500 for that. How about you just speak for free and have that be a requirement? Now, it may not be professional quality, but you could still have your phone on a tripod. I just did it this past weekend. Got one of these little things, put your phone in it, $20 tripod from Walmart, 4K camera. Guys, that's one way of getting some good one angle shot. A couple of those, you got good B-roll for a demo video. So I don't know what that's even called, but tripod on it right there, boom, video. So that's one way to monetize a pro bono. Pro bono, i.e. you're waiving your fee. But I would still have a fee. I would let them know that you're waiving it for that opportunity. So also, that's how you build referrals. It's also how you build your experience, live with a group. When you speak as well, this is the business side of speaking here too, that I think a lot of times people overlook. They just go out and they speak. Well, how are you keeping in touch? Are you making sure that you've got on your slides, you've got your social media? Are you connecting with them? Is your contact info there on every 2 or 3 slides and at the very end, right? If they really like your speech, they're going to like you and your future content.
Excuse me, Kevin. Kevin, do you mind sharing your screen? Because your screen is awfully small on mine. Or do I have to? I can change the presenter view, I guess. I'm sorry.
Steve, why don't you do this? So I don't spotlight. Anybody that wants to see my screen up close, just pin me.
I'll just change the speaker view. Yep. Sorry about that.
Yep, there you go. I also have an evaluation. Anytime I've got an after, like if I've given out some books, I always give out 5 to 10 free books of mine, because what do you think I want people to do afterward? Come up and have me sign them. In fact, I even make a joke about it several times. Like, hey, if you got a free copy of my book today, come see me afterward. I'll autograph it, double the value. Ha ha ha. They laugh at that. But then I let them know where I'm going to be afterward. And when people do come up to me, or they just want to chat with me, whether they have a book or not, I always have a small little evaluation. There's a copy of this on page 81 of the book. It shows you, it's so simple, y'all. It's a way that they leave me a testimonial and their contact information. Because if they're coming up to talk with me afterward, they probably enjoyed the presentation. So why would I not want to kind of connect with them, then send them a follow-up email, say, hey, it was so great to talk to you after my presentation. If I can help you in any way, just let me know. Real simple for me. That's how I do it. LinkedIn, if you've got their name and email, or just their name and business, or just their name, you could probably find them on LinkedIn. And now you're connected with them in perpetuity. I also send an immediate thanks to anybody that was responsible for bringing me in during that speech. whether it was the board, anybody I met, anybody that came up and thanked me. I send them separate emails as well as maybe one large group one if it was a kind of a planning committee that was responsible. They love that. And catch this, how I've gotten most of my testimonials in the past has been from me thanking them first. Because they get that thank you email, it's almost like they feel a duty to respond, right? And are they going to write back and say, oh man, Peter, you were horrible, but thanks for coming. No, they're gonna write back and say something. I mean, it's just a nice, easy way of kind of giving to get for all the right reasons. But that's how I've gotten a lot of my testimonials, is because I've actually thanked them, and then they write me back something, and I was like, I'm so honored that you found value. Would you mind if I included your testimonial on my e-speakers? Because that's really important to me. Never had a person tell me no. And I'm not a salesy person, at least I don't think I am, but they might feel like, oh, it's a little uncomfortable. That's what professional speakers need to do. You kind of need to push through that if that makes you feel a little uncomfortable. But I think that's really important to do that, to kind of build it. And then also, let me share with you real quick a website opt-in and why this is really, really important. Because when they go to your website, and perhaps let's say for you, it's going to be something that you're giving to them that day. The handout, right? Maybe it's a complimentary copy of something, right? Give them something that they want. All they've got to do is go to your website or email you, if you don't have a website, to email you in order to get it. Okay, now here's an example of mine. And remember, all this too, they don't need a speaker until when? They likely don't need a speaker the day that you're talking to them. So the reason you want to connect with all these folks in various different ways is to make sure that when they do need a speaker 6 months later, a year later plus, you had just sent that newsletter out, or they just saw a post that you had made on LinkedIn, something that would may have been a touch point that triggered them, like, oh, I saw Sarah. Yeah, Sarah had that amazing program. We've got this event coming up. We're going to reach out to her, or Linda, or Brandon, or Lynn, or insert person in this session. Because they don't need a speaker until they need a speaker, okay? So if you want to test this out, by the way, give me a thumbs up if you have a website. If you don't, that's perfectly fine. But if you do, make sure that your web designer has a opt-in. And I'm a big fan of a pop-up opt-in. Don't just have an opt-in on your site on the side corner that they might not see. I like to go with the pop-up opt-in. So once they're on your site for 3 to 5 to 10 seconds, it's going to be a... And then that's where you give them something, and all they've got to do is do what to get it? Put their email in, and now they're connected with you until they opt out. Hopefully they don't. I get opt-outs every single time I send a newsletter. But let me show you something too. I also get a whole bunch of opt-ins. And this is one way, folks, that I gauge how well my presentation was. A couple weeks ago, I'll be honest with you, don't know if it was just I'm not going to blame the audience. Some audiences are just not, I didn't have hardly any I think I had maybe 6 or 7 in front of a group of maybe 50. I was like, yeah, I kind of took it personal. I was like, oh, okay, maybe I was off that day. Well, a couple of days later, I'm talking to another group. Every one of those emails, it's automated. And your web person knows how to do this if you don't. So don't try to do this. Let them, it's simple. It's like a MailChimp or a Constant Contact or something like that, where it's built into the site, it's a plugin, and then you get an email for every single person that opted in. And that's a great way to also gauge a really good presentation. And now that you're connected with them, you can also send them a specific thank you. Say, thanks for being there today. So glad that you got my information. Stay in touch. All right. Let me get through a couple outreach and inreach. Any of you ever heard of Google Alerts? Give me a thumbs up if you've heard of Google Alerts. All right. If you have not, that's perfectly fine. I write about this in the book. Folks, outreach is one thing. I like the inreach. How do things come to me when I'm sleeping or while we're on this session right now, right? Google Alerts is what you type up. It's like keywords that you would search for yourself, like to get business, like motivational speaker and leadership. or keynote speaker wanted and association conference. I've got about 20 Google alerts that basically the Google spider sends something to me when something gets posted out on the internet. So yes, I'd have to click on each one. And I'll be honest, sometimes, I probably get 10, 15 emails a day. Most of them I just delete because I'm like, I'm busy enough right now, I'm fine, blah, blah, blah. But if I was looking to build, I'd click on each one. And it would show me what was posted in that. And many times that leads to an event. It leads to somebody that just brought a speaker in for that exact reason. That's why it found that.
Kevin, is that based on the keywords that you insert when you're setting
Yes.
it up? Okay.
Yes. And I'm not an expert on this, but I know enough about it that it does work. And Google Alerts are free. And if you just look up what's bolded here is what I put in as a Google Alert. So virtual conference and call for speakers, virtual conference and speaker needed, virtual call for speakers, keynote speaker wanted, any one of your kind of phrases where you're looking to identify your right association, boom, make it a Google Alert. They're free. You can put as many as you want, but just know, and you can indicate if you want to receive them daily, weekly, or more, but I would probably do no later than weekly, because if a week or two goes by, you might have missed out on it. But just know that's a good in-reach approach for finding speaking opportunities. Let's see, what else? So at some point, yeah, I'd encourage you, if you don't have a website now, know that needs to happen sooner than later, because some of this is going to be tough to have without that. Any quick questions?
Kevin,
Steve,
on Google Alerts, do you also use that for, I'll say, gathering current info on what you're speaking about? I mean, sometimes obviously Google can just fill you up with stuff, but I was just thinking as you were talking about having it, focusing on, it's great to get great new stats of, some organization, some college that just did a study that's going to be exactly what you're talking about. So I don't know if you do that or use that or not. I was just curious.
So would Google Alerts help with research?
That's what I'm asking. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Just be careful. You might go down some rabbit holes that you didn't even think existed. But that's why, and again, it goes back, let me do some Pulp Fiction. Let's kind of go back in time, and so we can go back and forward. That's why having a target association, how I communicate, or for example, when I took my sample presentation and then customize it in a proposal for the Virginia Community College system that I just did. So go back 5-6 months ago. When I did that for them, I studied their website. I knew kind of what's the lingo, what are some of the issues, what are some of the phrases that professional educators use. Now I don't have to do that again for the Orlando Community College system. I still want to look at its website, but what I can do is it gets me that opportunity to really kind of investigate and research. How do these people communicate? What are some of their top trends and issues? And I'll tell you one thing too, once you identify a couple state conferences, look at the schedule that they just had. For example, look at the schedule of, if educators or your audience, type up, they had their schedule at a glance, literally on their website. You can see on a schedule, like their most recent conference, you want to know what's hot in association, you want to know what to study, what are their current trends? Look at their last conference agenda. That tells you exactly what's on their mind and what they need, what they're having issues with. So Steve, I don't know if I would do Google Alerts to do homework. It might give you a good start. I just think it's going to get real noisy real quick, and it might get overwhelming how much you get. I'd say maybe just use Google to study the association that you want to look at first. All right. I'm looking at the time here. Bad speaker. One question. So I pulled this question out of the Q&A that you all sent. I literally did a copy paste. So module 3 questions. Which should I emphasize regarding my skills in speaking? The experienced trainer curriculum developer who can facilitate and customize, or the inspirational speaker, the skills I'm working to enhance? So the question is, which should I emphasize regarding my skills in speaking? I thought about this question a little bit, and I was a little confused. Just that's me. I look at, there's three things I always go for in any speech, whether I'm doing a keynote, whether I'm doing a workshop, like a 60-minute breakout session, or if I'm doing a half full day training. So which should I emphasize regarding my skills? I want to be engaging. I want to be educational, and I want to be empowering. So engaging for me, whether I'm doing a keynote or a small group, how am I engaging with them? So I look at it's almost like you want to be both. You want to kind of, you don't want to. I think all the skills kind of apply. Education is how's my content relevant, and then empowering. What I mean by that, the 3 E's: engaging, educational, empowering. Empowering is okay. What do I want them to do with this information? Like, do I have a specific call to action for them? Like, what can they actually do? So I don't know if I have an answer to that question. I don't know if any of you have a thought on that too, or if one of you asked it. I don't know who asked that, but feel free, if I didn't address the answer, let me know.
What was the question, Kevin? About empowering?
The question was, which should I emphasize regarding my skills in speaking? It sounds like they're more of a trainer background. They have more of a training background, or do they want to emphasize their skills that they want to work toward as the inspirational speaker? And to me, I think it's kind of the same. I mean, that's kind of what I was probably needing to get to quicker, right? Land that plane, right?
Well, a little bit of both, I think. I do think they're a bit separate, but I think a little bit of both, because you talk about empowering and we want to solve a problem. Well, people have to be empowered to feel like they can solve the problem with the information you've given them. So, with me, I call them tools. You're giving them tools to solve the problem. Now are they empowered to do it?
Yeah.
So that's the way I see that.
Yeah, good. Second question we had was, if I focus on my lived experiences, will I be pigeonholed into only speaking about those topics? I think the lived experiences is what create a great story and what connect. I mean, that's kind of what Kelly talked about too. They go on to ask or say, my lived experiences include serving as the head of a grand family, raising their relative's child, reclaiming life after sexual assault. And so here's what I would say. Number one, thank you for sharing that, whoever did. I think those lived experiences, I look at a great story this way: point, story, application. If I'm including a story in a presentation, it has to have a point. Why? So if I'm talking about serving as the head of a grand family, how is that relating now to the Virginia Community College System Conference? What's the point with that story, that lived experience that I'm sharing to them or with them? What's the point of me sharing that story with them? How can is it just an entertainment value, like a funny little quick story, or is it actually applying to a greater point that I'm addressing for them to help them in their day-to-day, personally or professionally? So as long as it has a point, I think any lived experience adds, that's for me, what I think is the great value of a great storyteller. In my opinion, the greatest speakers are the greatest storytellers, but they just have to have a point. All right. Let's do this real quick. Would y'all find value if I got through module 4 pretty quick? Do we want to do a quick breakout, or do you feel like we're okay in the large group? Do you have some things that you all want to kind of round table with others? What would you like? What would be valuable for y'all today? Are there some things that some of you want to actually workshop a little bit with the small group? Linda?
Well, I was going to ask you, I wanted to hear more about that opportunity on December 6th.
Okay, we'll talk about that at the very end. Yeah, we'll talk about that for sure.
Okay.
Anybody else? Do we want to workshop anything as far, and by that I mean, do y'all want to We can do it in a large group too, or breakouts of just, let me see who's writing. Stay in large group, stay in large group, large group. Okay.
Kevin, I have a question.
Evelyn, yeah, hit me.
Like what updates do we have in regards of the mentors?
So I was going to address that at the very end too. They're coming. I had to reach back out to everybody, all the mentor side, and I haven't heard back from some folks like I hoped as quickly as I needed, but those are coming. And sorry for the slight delay on that, but I think I wanted to match the right people up. So everybody that wants one will get one, and I'll make sure that gets done. I mean, it's got to get done this week. So because I'm traveling Thursday, Friday, so expect something tomorrow. Actually, I've heard back from most everybody I needed to, but I just didn't. When we go do the matching today or prior to today. All right, folks, real quick, some things on when and what to charge. When to charge. We'll talk about what to charge in just a moment, but when. I've got 3 criteria. It's kind of like, how do I verify paid potential? I've got some criteria. Well, same thing with when to charge. Number 1, are they reaching out to me? Have they seen me speak or been referred by someone who has seen me speak? And number 3, is this a conference or some type of event where they're charging registration fee? Those are big for me. So if it's check, 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 that means, in my opinion, I have a lot more leverage to charge a speaking fee. Does that make sense? As compared if I'm doing outreach to them, right? So this is another reason why they don't need a speaker till they need a speaker, right? So am I keeping in touch with them? Am I doing things I need to do to stay on top of mind so that 6 months later, when they do need a speaker, boom. Oh, Matthew just saw something posted. I know this person I saw. He'd be great. You know, because they likely are not going to remember, with all due respect, well, at least I'll say this about me. They're likely not going to remember Kevin Snyder. But they're going to remember that guy, that speaker we saw one time who talked about waiting on the Price is Right and shared that hilarious blah, blah, blah. I can't tell you how many times people have said, we need that for our opening, or we need that as a good close. It's a great story. We need it. And then they type up like speaker and Price is Right. I mean, I've had people find me that way where they forgot my name, but they remembered, you know. But anyway, are they reaching out to me? Have they seen me speak or been referred? And then is there a conference registration fee? Now, if one of these is not there, let's say that, hey, they're reaching out to you, and whether or not they've seen you speak or been referred, let's say that it's not an event where they're charging money. That's okay if it's an internal company. That's okay, because if it's Toshiba or JetBlue or insert company, that's all right. But if they're reaching out to you, I think for me that's the number 1 criteria. Are they reaching out to you? Okay. Now, how do they reach out to you? Well, this is again where a good website would come into play. If you do have a site or do not yet, but I would make sure that you definitely have a tab for contact. And I even prefer the term hire, right? What's the difference between a contact tab and a hire tab? What's the difference in psychology? What do you think? Oh, I'm gonna get his contact information, right? Or hers. No, I want you to know hire. Like when they click on it, they're not expecting a free speech. They know there's a little bit of psychology that goes to it. This is something that they're gonna pay for. So on my tab,
They've already decided they want you if they're clicking on hire.
Exactly. So if you go, and I would recommend this too, have a couple speakers that you want to be like. I hopefully said that in session 1. That's one of the top tips too. Have 3 speakers you want to be like, study them. Look at their site, watch their videos, see their frequency and how they share content. Do they even post at all? Right? You can learn a lot by watching speakers that you want to be like. One of the things that you want to do is look at their contact page or their hire page or book page, BOOK, right? Book as in booking. Look at what questions they're asking. I am shocked how many speakers don't ask better specific questions. Go to mine. I've got a couple questions in there anytime, and they're not required to fill out all the answers, but I ask certain questions to help me with specifically knowing when and what to charge. Okay, so let me give you a couple examples of this. How did you hear about Kevin? Well, how do I know how they heard about me? All right, they're reaching out to me, yes, but how do I know how they know about me? Number one, would that be important to know? For me, it would be. So how do I know that? I ask. Or a lot of times in an email, they'll say something, oh, so-and-so, you were referred by somebody else saw you speak at this conference. I mean, sometimes they'll tell you as well, but have a capture page on your website that definitely has this. And also now when we think about knowing what to charge, look, in my opinion, most of the folks that I enjoy helping who are struggling on the fee side, they might be speaking, but they're not getting paid like they want. It's because they aren't charging enough. And there's some psychology to that. Maybe they don't think they're ready. Maybe there's some assumptions, or maybe they feel bad about charging because they feel newer to speaking. None of you are less than $2,500 speakers. I'm talking to y'all. Because you have so much life experience, and you have, once you design that program, and if you're not charging that amount, and you can still say, my normal speaking fee starts normally at this, but I do the best I can to work with reasonable budgets. I would write that down. Let me say it again. My normal standard fee starts at blank, and I do the best I can to work with reasonable budgets. What that does from a psychology standpoint, it puts you in a different ballgame than the Toastmaster. And all due respect to Toastmasters, I am one, proud of it. But look, I'm not and none of us are complimentary speakers. So the psychology that goes from in my opinion, from the meeting planner is extremely important. And this actually just happened to me. I'm trying to think. Somebody found me off of Thumbtack or Gig Salad. And those are two platforms. I'm not necessarily recommending you get on them, but they're two platforms where you can make a profile for your speaking. You do have to pay for it, I believe now, or at least pay a commission on it. I would encourage you to look at them, but then make a decision if you decide to do it or not. Anyway, they had listed my fee of $1,000. So I had this person who reached out to me. Long story short, we got on the phone. I had one or two email exchanges prior to that to set that up. Then once we're talking on the Zoom, I knew that I didn't know what the budget was yet for them, so I actually addressed it first. I said, I've got a standard speaking fee. I do the best I can to work with reasonable budgets, but is there a budget range that you had in mind for this type of event? Or is there a budget range you had in mind for your speaker? I addressed it first, and then what did I do? I shut up. And it's like, bite your tongue, like have a wristband, snap yourself, let the silence be the power. And she goes, I'm so glad that you asked that question, because I almost didn't even schedule the session, because when the planning committee looked at your website, looked at your demo, they knew that you were the person we wanted for this, but you were only charging $1,000. So we didn't think you were any good. So when they said that to me, I'm like, oh, well, let me make you feel better, And I'm not saying this to impress you, but again, to impress upon you, have a standard speaking fee but you still also want to let them know in a very subtle way, you do your best to work with budgets. Don't say the word negotiate, just say you do the best you can, and then try to find out what their budget is, okay? Now, one last thing is, I asked that question, right? What is your budget amount or range for the services that you're inquiring? And this is what this auto response, when they fill out the form, this is what I get. So I get so much information from this contact page because I asked for it. Okay? Because I asked for it. And your website developer will know really how to do that. Let me share with you this really quick. This is page 115. I'd encourage you to look at this too. It kind of walks you through from cradle, what I say cradle to grave, on whether you're doing outreach or in-reach. What's the process from that initial email or phone call to actually collecting a deposit check? And what you can see here, the inquiry comes in, or you do outreach. Here it's a contact page form, right? I get this. Now what do? Well, I respond and set up a conference call to discuss their needs. I also do a ton of homework on my own to find out as much as I can prior to that event. If I need to ask them in an email what about their budget range because they didn't include it, I do. I say, I noticed you didn't mention if you have a budgeted range for this. Can you let me know what range that you might have? I at least try to get it again via email. I don't like getting on the phone with somebody without knowing that in advance. Okay. And also you want to be thinking about how to differentiate yourself. With virtual, I do this with BombBomb. It's with video, like you can send a video through email. It's BombBomb, B-O-M-B. That's a one way I've been able to differentiate myself with this virtual studio fairly well. And I still use it when I'm responding to people via Zoom because I feel like, hey, the studio looks professional, at least in my opinion. So it's better if I'm sitting down in front of a bookshelf. That's going to be one of the ways I differentiate myself as a professional speaker. And we've not talked about this, but if you all want my virtual studio equipment list, I can send you a link for it. It's actually on Pay to Speak. It's free. It's a free download as well, but I'm happy to give that to you if you want it. It walks you and gives you everything that I have in my studio here. All right. So after that call, then I send them a 3-tiered proposal. I like 3 tiers. This is big, huge on the fee side, folks. Don't have just one fee. That's probably what they're thinking. Hey, we just need a speaker to come in and do this keynote or this workshop. I'd encourage you to have 3 different ways that you can work with them. And if you go, it's on any of my emails, you can see what, I think it's page 5. You can see these 3 tiers right here. And when somebody is comparing speakers, if a speaker doesn't have these like 3 tier, I mean, think about when you go to a restaurant, they don't have just one thing on the menu. No, they've got chicken, fish, steak. Or if you're going to buy a car, they've got the standard, the sport, the luxury version. And really, you're not upselling, in my opinion. And that's something I'd encourage you to wrap your head around. You're not upselling at all. What you're doing is you're providing more value. Doesn't that make you feel better? Right? When you can add more value. And so I'd encourage you to look at each one of these to save us some time. But when you look at from a meeting planner perspective, if they're looking at 3 different speakers and you're the only one that provides those 3 options, just from a value perspective, who do you think they're going to select? Probably the person with the 3 options. And those 3 options are not the same price. So option 1 would be your standard speaking fee. Option 2 would be standard fee plus maybe 20%, roughly. And I don't have this set for me, folks. I kind of have, I can change it. That's one thing with NSA that you will hear about what they call speaker fee integrity. Have any of y'all heard that? Okay, you're going to hear it a lot in NSA. I decide how I run my business, and there are groups I talk to for far less money. So I can, because I do talk to the groups that pay me what I feel like I deserve. So if I'm talking to a bank, as compared to the Virginia Community College system, if I know I can put a 0 behind that with the bank, you think I'm going to do that? Yeah, and nobody's going to tell me how I run my business. But also when they tell me what their budget is and it's a lot more, it's like, I need to deliver the value on that. But if I know I can charge also a little bit more because I've done my homework and I know that, or I have the right system to collect that, then I'll throw in 150 copies in my book and I'll basically give them option 3. That fits, here's all I provide for that amount. So I'm not further upselling them. All right. And I guess, folks, what I'll do is I'll leave it here. Any questions on module 4? because module 5 is really just some ideas on the kind of the back end that you can kind of look at on your own and see how that sounds. How are we doing? Man, there's so much in here we could talk about. Wow. All right. Well, hey, look, our time's not over as far as the academy goes. One thing I want to mention to you all, and Evelyn, you brought it up, kind of like what's next. December 6th, we are looking at that date. Well, it turns out the chapter's already planned a dine around on that same day. So if November 29th does not work, by the way, the Speaker Academy Showcase, my vision for this was only you all that want to will have the opportunity, kind of like what Sarah did and Dr. Glenda at the intensive, have a chance virtually to basically do a small segment of a speech. And what we're going to do is make it a chapter event that anybody can come to virtually and register for. It'll be free. And then also gives you the chance to invite other people to come watch you as well. But it'll be a supportive thing to do. I know there'll probably be, it's intimidating. No, don't. Just it's a great segment. We'll hype it up. We'll make I'll probably myself or Larry will co-MC it. It'll be fun. Regardless of when we did it, and we've never done anything like this, by the way. I just thought it'd be something kind of cool for y'all and for the chapter to do. How many of you would be interested in that? Give me a thumbs up. All right, that's everybody. Okay, good. And if you didn't raise your thumb, you're doing it. Now, November 29th, would that be a date? I know it seems like it's right around the corner, but I'm all about if the iron's hot. Lynn, give me a thumbs up or down if November 29th you could do it. All right, I see 2 thumbs down. I see 3 Brandon, could you do it?
What time?
We do it like a 12 noon to 1. Sarah, could you do it if you wanted to? All right, let's see. All right, so here's what I'm thinking. Let's, if we only have 2 or 3 people on this call that could do it, I'd like to maybe push it to mid-December, maybe turn it into even like a holiday type thing. Let me follow up with y'all about that. Sound better? Okay, so we'll look at like a December, but then it still gives us some time to promote it. Also, real quick, mentor assignments are coming up. Expect that from me. I should have had somebody help me with that. That was a little bit of a labor of love behind the scenes. Access to all the sessions, you're going to have that in Evergreen. The AENC Showcase, for those of you, it's a small investment, not too much of one. I believe it's $600, maybe $750, where Association Executives North Carolina, for those of you that are local or could be here, and the spots already might be full, but have we talked about this or have I sent y'all an email about this? I think okay, good. Check it out. If you're looking for some good demo, it's going to be quality production, 3 camera angles, and you're going to be in front of some association professionals. But I would do it though more so if you need demo video.
Kevin, is that only once a year?
For AENC here in the Carolinas, yes. They only do it once a year. And so check out, like Terry, you're up in Michigan. Check out if Michigan has an association Executives of Michigan. It might be MAS, or and Association Executives is a good example of a structured association. The challenge with them, they're very speaker flooded. They usually don't pay for speakers. So that would be not an association I would focus on up front. But if they put on a speaker showcase in your area, even, for Michael, who was with us, he had to jump off. He's at Michigan. Check out your state to see if they put on a speaker showcase. And I'd encourage y'all to dive into that.
Are there other organizations that do that type of thing that we can search for that do speaker showcases?
Great question, Mike. Unless MPI does it. MPI is Meeting Professionals International. And sometimes, it's funny you even asked that. I actually was going to volunteer myself to better collaborate. Like AENC, they should have come to us to offer this to us first, in my opinion. Like, why are you going to open your, like, you want to get the best speakers? We'll start NSA. Like, anyway. So MPI might put something on, check your area. I don't think they do it here in the Carolinas, but I'm already thinking of 2023 and going to AENC and MPI. And this person who I know is putting this showcase on, which is why I'm sharing it with y'all, Evan Carroll, he's a former president of NSA Carolinas chapter. It's like, well, why don't all four of us get together and make this thing big next year and make it a value add for, and really start with NSA Carolinas folks first, give them like a pre-order. So yeah, do a little bit of homework on your own, depending where you're at. Also highly encourage you, obviously, to stay involved with NSA Carolinas. We don't have any events coming up right now that are already on the list, but we are going to have, they're going to publish one or two in December in the next couple of days. And then Larry Long is already working on a good list of the whole spring. So just, stay connected there. I also would encourage y'all to consider, how do you stay active with practicing your speaking? I'm involved with 2 different Toastmaster groups for that reason. Toastmasters is a great resource to practice. Just know, hey, you're probably going to be in look maybe for an elevated club where they're not counting all your ahs and ums, and there are different types of personality styles for all the Toastmaster groups. I'll leave it at that, but that's a great way to practice and to also get feedback. And even if you're not looking for feedback, they'll give it to you, but you still get the practice. And also speaker labs too. I want to make sure we keep doing those about once a quarter. And those are practice opportunities within NSA in a safe environment. And
Kevin, I have another question.
yeah.
The mentor program that you're talking about, the signing us to mentors, is that voluntary? Are they doing it? In other words, is it free to have somebody mentor us?
It will be, absolutely. Yeah, there is no fee. And one thing's about the mentorship, because this actually is a lot of back and forth I've had with them, and say, look, it's very organic. There's no structure intentionally to it. I'm going to let it be loosely coupled, as they say in higher ed. Not intentionally unorganized, but it's going to be really something, hey, whether you guys touch base once a month, once a quarter, once as just needed, or let you two all kind of decide. All I know is we've had a whole bunch of folks offer to support our Academy people. And frankly, I think we should have it within NSA in general anyway, even outside of Academy. But if any of you are looking or feel like you need somebody to kind of like, hey, I kind of need a coach, like somebody actually who's going to spend time helping me, that's, in my opinion, that's a little different than mentorship. So just, know that, but none of them are doing it for that reason. They're not, and frankly, most folks, they don't really have a coaching, they're not doing coaching. So they're just offering to help. And I think, I've got a coach, and I also coach people. So the coach helps me with finding my own blind spots and talk through things. I'd encourage all of y'all to consider coaching too, regardless of wherever you're at. And then I'm gonna shut up. I'm talking way too much. Book writing. I work with a company called Right Way Publishing. They are amazing. If you don't have a book publishing or a publisher that can help you with either formatting or editing, highly, highly encourage it. And one thing we'll be doing some videos on coming up with NSA Carolinas is TEDx. I think all of you likely have a very good TEDx speech inside of you, if not a couple. So keep that and kind of on your radar as well. How are we feeling? We're going to close up.
Kevin,
Can we get yeah.
are we going to vote today?
Let me do this. I would want to do a survey back to y'all with all the groups. I want to make sure that everybody knows. You talk about the charity, right, Terry?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Let me do this. I'll send y'all a survey link that's got all the charities on it. And if you're not sure what exactly we're talking about, if you go back up to the, let me pull it out. If you go back up to the Google Doc to submit questions for modules 3, 4, and 5. At the very front of it or some nonprofit groups, because what we want to do, or what we will be doing, sorry, is picking 2 of these groups out. I mean, if we only had 4, we could probably still do all 4. But if any of you would like to add a group onto this, I want to take all this, send out an email with the survey, and then we basically vote on which groups we want to have a portion of the registration fee for the academy then donated to. So we'll do that. I'll probably do it in my thank you email to y'all. I'll make that a highlight. Other questions, or I think I saw a hand maybe. Okay. Well, hey, why don't we do this? One thing, how are you feeling? What one thing are you most excited about as we kind of close off Academy? And we will all stay in touch, or I'll stay in touch with you as well. But one thing you're kind of taking from this, if you don't mind.
I'll start. I think that, one thing that I really want to take from it is just the confidence to go out and speak and ask for money. So just that, it's a simple thing, but using your expertise to help build that confidence and really make sure that I understand the business. Appreciate
Love
it.
it. The confidence, yes, absolutely. It's a big part of the community too that we need. All of us need it. Imposter syndrome definitely can creep in.
I can say for me, it's all about like one thing at a time. I do sessions like this and I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I want to do all of this by tomorrow at 2 p.m. And you just can't, you can't move any faster than you can move. So it's just going to be focusing on a few key things and trying to, kind of like we talked about at the beginning, trying to track momentum. And yeah, you can't have it all at once.
Good.
In my case, I will say that it's about focusing specifically, like as Sarah said, it's like one step at a time, but like the first focus that you need to have is like have clear mind on what do you want to speak about, right? And then starting from there, then you can grow.
Yeah, and following up on that, again, back to Sarah, one thing at a time. The one thing I've really learned is that speaking is just not speaking. There's so much that has to be done. Speaking's almost like, the end. It's almost like you've done all the work once you're actually speaking. And, so that has to come first. So that's the big takeaway for me.
Yeah, following up on that, I would say the intentionalism of every step of the way.
I think a big takeaway for me has been something that you said at the very first session. And I've been struggling with imposter syndrome through this whole thing. It's like, I know I can do this, but who do I think I am? And I heard you say at the very beginning, I think somebody was talking about Steve Gilliland, and you said, you're not him and he's not you. And so that's resonated with me, and that's helped a great deal.
I think for me, it's just this focus on finding one signature speech for one group of people. It really helps me focus as opposed to creating 10 different things for 10 different groups whenever something comes up. It really makes me focus in and have to pick something, and working on that one thing, I think, makes it better because it's now a focal point. So that's what I've been racking my brain on.
Linda, did you say, have you already spoke? I'm sorry.
No, I just was focusing on what everybody else was saying. I do think I have to agree. I think focus, and that everybody has to start somewhere. and stop comparing myself to people who've already been in the industry for years and just be where I am.
No, that's great. Well, your feedback is, thank you all so much for being part of this. Know you've got arms around you, people thinking of you. I've had a lot of people kind of constantly ask me, hey, how's Academy? How's this? How that? And I try to give them little quick updates. But you've got a great community of folks all around you, regardless of where you live, at least within NSA Carolinas. So, sometimes, and that's why the mentor, I think, will be very helpful, but also don't be shy to ask for help too. You're going to find the more you get involved, the more caring people are than you even imagine. And that's a gift. So I'm honored to be a small part of your journey as well. And you're part of mine. So onward we go, right? Let's grow.
Hey, everybody, let's give applause to Kevin. Thank you so much. This was great. This was great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Well, till the next time, my friends, I'll go ahead and stop recording now. And if any of you want to stick around, I know we're already on some overtime, but feel free to stick around if you want.